hope that all of that is working. Okay, guys, it is 3 o'clock. Welcome and thank you all for joining us. I don't know if you can see my video here. I'm kind of operating this thing. My name is Ryan Young of Rising Tide Explorers, and you're here to watch the first edition of RTE Knowledge Board, which is our virtual presentation series where we have a bunch of local experts who are going to come and talk about a variety of topics in Southwest Florida here. Welcome and thank you all for joining us. Sorry guys, I have a here. I'm kind of operating this thing. My name is Ryan Young of Rising Tide Explorers, and I'm listening to my own recording. Sorry guys. The first edition of RTE Knowledge Board, which is our virtual. Okay, sorry about that. All right, so welcome everybody. This is Rising Tide Explorers, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about who we are before we get fired off, and I'm going to introduce our speakers as well as we go here. So first of all, we are, who are we? So Rising Tide Explorers is an eco-tour company operating out of Southwest Florida here. We're the exclusive eco-tour partners of the Friends of Rookery Bay and the Rookery Bay Reserve. And they do lots of great work to help protect and preserve our coastal treasure here, the Rookery Bay. So that's where we do most of our work. We were founded in 2016 by a group of nerds, basically, some local biologists who thought that there was some value in trying to raise the bar of ecotourism in the region by providing really qualified guide staff, because you can be out there with just about anybody. But we think it's important and valuable to send really qualified guides out so that we can really educate people and connect them to this amazing wild place that we have here in Southwest Florida. All of our guides are active local biologists. They do research in the area on a variety of things, water quality, herpetology, invasive species, you name it. So we got a really good schedule of speakers here that are going to come talk to you about all this interesting stuff. So you can learn more about your backyard if you're local, and if you're not, more about a place that you might like to come visit sometime. So we offer kayak tours, rentals, and boat tours through our partnership with the Friends of Rookery Bay. And all of them are really cool. You can head to our website, and it's risingtidefl.com to kind of see the tour offerings that we do provide. Currently, we're only providing rentals. So if you're looking to escape the cabin fever, then let us know and we'll get you set up with a nice rental. We focus a lot on environmental education, and we're actually starting our own independent research as Rising Tide Explorers pretty soon. And we're the #1 ranked tour company in Naples on TripAdvisor. And you can see some of the partnerships that we have here around the screen. We're all certified kayaking instructors and certified in first aid. We've won some awards, and we're pretty proud of what we do here at Rising Tide. So just to give you a little more info on what we're doing here, we're launching Rising Tide Explorers Home Edition. So while we can't be out exploring every day like we love to do so much, we want to provide you with something. We're a mission-based company, and our mission is to connect people to the outdoors and give them that connection to environmental science and all the amazing things that are going on out there with the people who study it and are so passionate about it. So you can check out all the things we're doing at risingtidefl.com/home edition. And that's a great way to kind of see all the things we're offering. And you can look right here on the left, there's Explorers Academy. That is a kids program that we're launching where we have weekly themes and activities for kids to do. So if your kids are running around the house and driving you crazy, sign them up for Explorers Academy. They'll get their own Dropbox folder where they can submit all their activities. We also have science project videos coming out, all kinds of fun stuff. And this goes on for weeks and weeks. So sign up anytime, and your student can earn a badge. Battle of the Bay is really fun. I'll touch on that in a minute. And of course, Rising Tide Explorers Knowledge Board, named for our private Facebook group with all of our guides, where we exchange information and learn from one another, so we can share that with you guys. So just to get a little more detail on some of these programs here. This is the Knowledge Board. Today we have a really cool presentation. which I'll talk about in just a moment here. It's Discover Rookery Bay with Captain Jeannine, who also happens to be my wife. So she is the middle school education specialist for the Rookery Bay Reserve, and is currently pursuing her master's degree in environmental studies with a focus on science communication. And she's been working at the reserve for years and wants to share this amazing place with you. On Friday, you'll get to hear from me, and I'll be doing Magic of the Mangroves, where we dive pretty deep into mangrove ecology and talk about the system that makes our coastal areas so unique here in Southwest Florida. We've done this presentation around town a couple times, and it's been pretty well received. So make sure you sign up for that one. It should be good, and you'll learn more than you ever want to know about mangroves. And then on next Wednesday, we have Sarah Norris, Captain Sarah Norris, sorry, who is also pursuing her master's degree in environmental science and works in stewardship at the Rookery Bay Reserve, doing lots of different stuff, namely running the sea turtle monitoring program, which she's going to talk to you all about what they do, some of the numbers, really cool stuff to kind of see what's going on with sea turtles in Southwest Florida. So that's kind of the scoop on the knowledge board. Battle of the Bay. Definitely get in on this if you haven't. This is a blast. We're having so much fun. March Madness and all of our sports have been canceled, but competition is alive and well in the estuary. So here we're kind of doing a bracketology competition that's powered by your votes. So you can view all the profiles of all the different contenders, including everything from mosquitoes to dolphin, that are facing off for you to determine who the grand champion of the estuary is. We have sportscast videos coming out. Some of them are live on our YouTube page right now, highlighting the different divisions. We have the vertebrate division and the invertebrate division. So lots of cool variety, and you can learn a lot about the different critters that you can find in the estuary just by listening to us having some fun talking about them. And every vote you cast is an entry to win a boat tour, kayak rentals, or RTE gear, like this shirt right here. If you can see, they're 50 UPF fishing shirts, also some pretty cool hats that we have. So lots of cool prizes, ways to stay involved and keep learning and have some fun while we're all stuck at home here. And then, like I said, Explorers Academy, this is just an example of some of the weekly badges you can earn, and the junior biologist badge, which they'll earn after they complete 5 of the modules over the week. So just to get into it here, oh, this is not where I wanted to go. We're going to fire this off. And again, I introduced Jeannine. We also have another special guest speaker today, Savannah Lawson, who works at the reserve. She does all their high school programming. She's originally from Martha's Vineyard, and Savannah studied earth science and invertebrate paleontology at Smith College before working a number of other conservation groups. Most recently, the Massachusetts Audubon Society came here over a year ago to share her passion for marine science and science education with us here at Rookery Bay. And she runs those high school programs and college programs at the reserve. So with that, I won't delay any further. It's time to learn about the Rookery Bay. So why don't I turn it over here to Captain Jeannine. You there, Jeannine?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
All right, awesome. So I'm going to pull up our presentation here. And yeah, welcome everybody. Thanks for tuning in. So this is Jeannine speaking right now. And yeah, we're really excited to deliver this presentation. Savannah and myself, we're kind of going to team tag this. So Savannah's actually going to start us off. Our outreach program that we offer when, you know, social norms are the way that they once were. This is a staple in our community that we will go out and give to a variety of groups so they can really understand, you know, what is Rookery Bay National Estuarine Research Reserve? What separates us from all these other amazing agencies that we have in Collier County? And how do we actually work in cooperation with them? So I'll go ahead and hand the remote to Savannah.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeannine, and thank you, Ryan, for setting this up and introducing us. And thanks for everyone for tuning in. It's wonderful to click on our participants list and see some familiar names there, some volunteers and board members who normally we would be on site doing all of this or out in our communities. So I'm glad that we could sort of unite over the internet to come together and try to, you know, be as normal as we can in this time. Again, thanks for tuning in, and I'm gonna hopefully we'll teach you guys a little bit about Rookery Bay National Estuarine Research Reserve. Let's see if my controls here work. Jeannine, did you pass the remote over to me?
Yes.
Okay, just one sec. I'm having trouble. Okay, there we go. So to start us out, you would have noticed that in our name, Rookery Bay National Estuarine Research Reserve, we have that word estuary in there. And I apologize if the controls are a little funky. We're getting used to this whole screen sharing setup. Let me try to just skip back to this last slide. Okay, so to start us off, what is an estuary? I know many of you probably know, but maybe there are some new folks here watching. So an estuary, very simply put, is a coastal area where you have salt water and fresh water meeting and mixing. So there are these beautiful transitional zones, and you're gonna find estuaries all over the world. Anywhere, again, where you have salt water and fresh water meeting and mixing at the coast, but all across the world, they're gonna look very different. So Rookery Bay, the estuary there is going to look very different from that center photo that you see. That is a estuary up in Mississippi. And that's going to look very different also from the estuary you see on the right, which is from the estuary up in Alaska. So again, these are areas that have certain things in common that will be found all over the world, but they're all going to look very different from each other depending on where you are. So this next diagram here, nice and simple. Let's see if this will switch over for me. So nice, simple diagram here. Sorry again about the controls. Just showing, again, that meeting of fresh water and salt water. That photo on the top, some of you might recognize, is right down on Shell Island Road, right where our dock is. So for anyone who's ever been on an eco tour with Ryan or Jeannine, on a school program, or down there volunteering with Team Ocean, you might recognize that mangrove estuary right there. So most places around the world, these estuaries are going to be formed because you have a river meeting the sea. So typically you'll hear estuaries referred to as where rivers meet the sea. Here in Southwest Florida, though, we're a bit unique in that most of our fresh water is running off of the land in the form of sheet flow coming from the Everglades. So we are pretty unique, and then meeting and mixing with that salt water, of course, from the Gulf of Mexico. So at Rookery Bay National Estuarine Research Reserve, we do fall under the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. Specifically under Florida DEP, we fall under a branch that's called the Office of Resilience and Coastal Protection. And this is really exciting because until Ron DeSantis came into office, we were called the Florida Coastal Office. And when Ron DeSantis came in, he put a huge emphasis on addressing some of Florida's upcoming environmental issues, especially in terms of coastal resilience and water quality. So, apologize, let me try to skip back here. So through this Office of Resilience and Coastal Protection, we actually protect 4 million acres across the entire state. Jeannine, are you able to skip back to that slide for me?
Yes.
My apologies, this keeps changing on me.
Let's see. Okay.
There it is. Okay. So as you can see here, all of the different sites that make up those 4 million acres. So again, it's not just these down here in Rookery Bay that we're protecting, but all across the entire state of Florida. And these are all of your aquatic reserves, the 3 national estuarine research reserves, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a moment, the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary, and the Coral Reef Conservation Program. So what I think is really amazing is that this office is completely separate from our state parks office. So that is an entirely different branch with an entirely different, several million acres that they're protecting. So DEP does an incredible amount of work all across the state, again, to address our coastal issues, to protect these aquatic areas, as well as the different terrestrial areas around Florida as well. Jeannine, could you skip to the next for me? Okay, so, sorry, this is, I think there's a lag time with my screen when it goes to switch the screens.
Okay. Well, everybody just bear with us.
Yeah, I apologize.
Figure it out.
You'd think I would be a little more tech savvy here. Okay, so how Rookery Bay actually started. Let's go to this first one. So we are, again, a National Estuarine Research Reserve. We were the 3rd site in that program out of 29 across the country. And initially, we were only 3,000 acres. So if you're familiar with the reserve, you'll notice some places here that you'll recognize. Key Waden Island on the western edge of this map here. So you can see here that we were way, way smaller than we are today. So that is how we began. And that's why we got our name, is because that original location that we protected included what we now call Rookery Bay proper. So that is, there is the actual Rookery Bay, and that is where our name is derived from. So the reason that this whole area was protected to begin with was because back in 1962, there was this road proposed through Collier County that was eventually dubbed the Road to Nowhere. So at this point in time, we were starting to see really heavy development in both Naples and in Marco Island, but everything in between was pretty much untouched. And so there was a company that came in and they had proposed to build this road that essentially would have cut through what is now Rookery Bay Research Reserve to connect Naples and Marco Island. And there was a lot of concerned citizens within Collier County who opposed this road being formed. They saw that heavy development going on both to the north and to the south in Naples and Marco, and they wanted to protect some of what was in between. So it prompted this grassroots effort, which led to the formation of the Collier County Conservancy with support from the Audubon Society. And through the Collier County Conservancy and with the help of 4,000 local Collier County school children, they were able to raise the money to protect those initial 3,000 acres. And while at that time, it didn't protect everything that is now Rookery Bay, they were able to make a large enough land purchase that it effectively put an end to that proposed road. So now we are 110,000 acres. So going from just that really tiny 3,000 that we began with, or it seems small now in comparison, we've expanded our boundaries all the way from the northern edge, and you can see our boundary line marked here on the map in yellow. So we do extend all the way from that northwestern tip, which is just south of downtown Naples and Gordon's Pass on the northern end of Key Waden Island. And we extend all the way down through the 10,000 islands and right up to the border with Everglades National Park on that southeast edge of our boundary. So really incredible amount of land. You'll see that Marco Island just sits right outside the but some points or places that people might be familiar with that they didn't realize were actually there. The whole Cape Romano complex is within the reserve. Key Waden Island, which is the largest unbridged barrier island left in the state of Florida. And then the whole 10,000 islands area as well. So really incredible area that we are protecting and managing here at Rookery Bay. So I mentioned that we are a National Estuarine Research Reserve, and as that word national implies, we do actually have a federal partner. So back in, little history lesson for everyone, back in 1972, Congress passed what's called the Coastal Zone Management Act, which essentially gave guidance to coastal states on how to manage their coastal resources. And as part of that Coastal Zone Management Act, they asked states to go around and set aside estuaries that were undeveloped and relatively pristine, and they wanted them to be set aside for both research and for education. So at that time, we knew that estuaries were important, but we didn't know a whole lot about how they functioned. And so going ahead and setting all of those aside allowed us to do that research and to get those answers, but then also disseminate it to the public and create all of this educational programming and outreach as well. So through this, all of these National Estuarine Research Reserves, of which right now there are 29 and hopefully soon to be 30 or more, all of them get some of their funding from NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. That's our federal partner where we get that word national from. And then NOAA will pair with some sort of state agency. In the case of Florida, that's the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. And then they'll work with that state agency to run that reserve. And all of these reserves are going to have all these different things in common. And Jeannine's going to talk a little bit more about that when we transition into her half. But within the state of Florida, we have 3 of these National Estuarine Research Reserves. Rookery Bay, of course, down here in Naples, then Apalachicola up here on the Panhandle, and Guanatolamato Matanzas National Estuary and Research Reserve up in St. Augustine. So I would highly recommend to visit any of these other sites if you ever get the opportunity to, because they are all very unique and special and beautiful. So why are estuaries important? Why did Congress ask all of these states to go around and set aside these estuaries? Well, for one thing, they're extremely productive. When you think of a productive environment, that essentially means that these areas are able to support lots of different life. So we think about areas like rainforests as being really productive, but what most people don't realize is that estuaries are some of the most productive habitats in the entire planet. So they produce and support so much different life, an incredible abundance and diversity. So they provide habitat for all sorts of different species. Up here in the top left, you can see our shark research program going on. So estuaries are a very important area, both for sharks and then also in the bottom in the center for the small tooth sawfish, in particular for going and pupping or giving birth to their young. So these are what we call nursery areas. Young animals love to grow up in estuaries because they have lots of food and are well sheltered. So sharks, sawfish, lots of different birds are going to use the mangrove canopies to create their nests in, but not just wading birds, shorebirds as well will be nesting on the beaches, lots of different plant life, mangroves and seagrass. And then in the bottom left, some of our favorite charismatic megafauna, our sea turtles, of course, make their home here as well. And that is just the beginning. From black bears to panthers to manatees, you can really find anything within the boundaries of Rookery Bay. They also are incredibly important for us. Estuaries offer many ecosystem services, we call them, which is essentially a free service that we get from the natural world. So one of the most important things that they do is storm protection. We basically have this amazing barrier wrapping itself all the way around the tip of southern Florida in the form of these mangrove estuaries. So they are going to absorb storm surge. They're going to protect against erosion. They're going to lessen the impacts of heavy winds. So it's hard to say what Irma would have looked like if we didn't have these areas, but I don't think we would even want to imagine what some of those hurricanes might be like if we didn't have this amazing natural barrier all around us. These are also really important to our marine economy. And this is not just in Southwest Florida, this is all across the world. So our fishing and seafood industry, if anyone here, and I imagine there's a few of you that like to either eat seafood or go out and go fishing, if you like to do either of those activities, 75 to 90% of the fish that you catch or seafood that you catch to eat or just recreationally, 75 to 90% begin their life in an estuary. So these areas are so critical, not just to supporting our diets, but to our marine economies too. Those people who depend on going out and harvesting fish and harvesting shellfish for their livelihoods rely on these estuaries because that's where those animals are going to be starting their lives out. And of course, for folks like Ryan as well with Rising Tide Explorers, the ecotourism that comes from protecting these areas is absolutely incredible. I always like to give the example that people want to come down to Florida to go tarpon fishing. That's very popular. And guess where tarpons start their lives out? As tiny, tiny larvae living in these estuaries. So people, if you want to go catch a tarpon, you're going to fly to Florida and buy a plane ticket. You're going to book a hotel room. You're going to go out to eat. Maybe you're going to bring your family. You're going to come to Rookery Bay's Learning Center and bring your kids there. You're going to book a charter fishing captain who's going to have purchased a boat and fishing equipment and bait, all from your marina. So just from having that tarpon there, from protecting the place that it grows up in, you're creating this multi-million-dollar marine economy around us. So it's truly incredible what we are able to accomplish by protecting these areas. So our mission here is to serve Southwest Florida as a trusted resource for science-based information to foster connected human and ecological communities, with the vision of having communities in Southwest Florida value nature and prosper in concert with healthy estuaries. So that's a little bit of a mouthful, but I like to summarize this as at Rookery Bay, we like to have our cake and eat it too. We want to have a healthy environment and a healthy economy as well. And like I was mentioning, the amazing thing about Southwest Florida is that there is no other place where it is so possible as here, because our environment and our economy are so closely tied together. So we really do want to have the best of both of those worlds. And that is our overall mission here at Rookery Bay Research Reserve. Of course, we cannot do this alone. It takes a whole lot of partners in order to accomplish our mission. So you can see that some of these partnerships are pretty, pretty expected. Rising Tide Explorers obviously is a very close partner. Florida Gulf Coast University, Florida International University, FWC. Those are all ones that you would expect. Some of our other local conservation groups. And then there's some that you might not, or might be a little bit more surprising, like Red Bull. You might wonder why we are partnered with Red Bull. It turns out that great partnerships are all over the place, and Red Bull has started working with the reserve, where each year they come in, they help organize a beach cleanup, and then they actually hold a very cool sort of, it's called the Privateers Race, a paddleboarding treasure hunt race through the reserve around the Cape Romano complex, just to the southeast of Marco Island. So again, it's really amazing how we've been able to build both these local, statewide, and national level partnerships, all to help accomplish that mission of having that our environment and our economy sort of in tandem with each other. Okay, my screen isn't changing, but oh, there it goes. Okay, so one of our most important partnerships that we have is our Friends of Rookery Bay. I'll give a little shout out here to the board members who I know are watching from looking at our participants list. So from our board members, all of the volunteers, everyone who takes part in our Friends group, we have to thank you so much, because we really truly could not be a part, do the work that we do without having this group. So for those of you who are not familiar with Friends groups, as a government agency, we are limited in our ability to fundraise and recruit volunteers and things like that. So having this nonprofit Friends branch really gives us the capability to do so much additional work. And I can speak for the whole reserve when I say that we couldn't do our mission without the Friends group, but also from my own position, running my marine science programs. FORB helps me purchase an incredible amount of equipment. They help me recruit volunteers. Some of my volunteers are on their board. So really, we could not do that work without the Friends of Rookery Bay. So thank you to everyone who is involved in that group from the top down, because they really do such an incredible amount for all of the staff here at Rookery Bay. And on that note, I'm going to turn it over to Jeannine here to finish you off and give you a little bit more information about some of the specific projects that we work on. So thank you guys again for tuning in, and I know you will enjoy Jeannine's part probably even more than my own.
Savannah, that was awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for bearing with some of the technical difficulties by the end.
So yeah, I think we got it down. We are figuring, how to work in this style with each new offering that we do. So we're really thankful to Rising Tide that we could actually kind of try this out for the first time by being their first guest speakers. So now that you kind of have an idea of like what the reserve means as far as where it came from, its origins, and I want to focus on the 4 basically divisions that maintain this mission. How do we accomplish this mission, not only with our various agencies that help us out in our Friends group, but it's through these different departments that we're kind of all aligned. And there's going to be a lot of overlap even between some of the independent missions of each department here. All of the reserves, all 29 reserves have these departments. So research, stewardship, or what you might hear as resource management, education, and then coastal training program. So these make up the staff, the 30 plus staff that we have today at the reserve. So starting off with research, there's many aspects of research, and we're really just going to tackle some highlights here, starting with our water quality monitoring program. So this is titled as the System-Wide Monitoring Program, or SWAMP. You might see it in one of our publishings or on our website. And on the national level, as it is a national platform, you'll see the acronym SWMP. So it is a national platform that helps to coordinate long-term monitoring across all 29 research reserves. And this program, we measure things like various water conditions like pH, dissolved oxygen, temperature, salinity, depth, turbidity. We measure nutrients, we measure chlorophyll. We have 5 sites that are continuously taking these measurements. So in the picture there, you're seeing our water quality coordinator upload the information from a data son, which is housed in that blue tubing along the piling there. So 4 out of those 5, she has to go and visit and upload that data on a bi-weekly basis. And then 1, though, however, out of the 5 is a live feed. So it is transmitting the data that I just mentioned, up to a satellite and then right down to your computer. So you can get basically live streaming data of water quality in an area of Henderson Creek, which is near our field station area where Savannah and I both work out of. You can get live streaming data about our water quality right at your fingertips. It has a slight lag, but it's just amazing what we can do with this information. We've been able to bring it into our education programming, into schools, have students, learn how to graph using this real-time data and understanding something about their natural environment that is pretty important. So this is what I would say are probably our most important aspect of research. The lifeblood of the estuary is indeed its water and the quality of its water. We also have a weather monitoring station at our headquarters, by our learning center. So she works with that as well. Wildlife monitoring. So all of the animals that catch people's eyes. We already mentioned their sea turtles, but we have a lively environment here. It's extremely productive, like Savannah mentioned, and then that just allows for this incredible nursery. And that includes things like juvenile fish and sharks. So we have a great program that was formed as a monitoring component of the Picayune Strand Restoration Project. Our original fisheries program was set up to reflect the restoration of that project. And what is now turned into is a multi-decade assessment of juvenile fish population and habitat use. So our biologist there, Pat O'Donnell, has been working 20 plus years on collecting data regarding fish populations and the movements of juvenile sharks. We also have a strong sea turtle program. The nesting is actually just beginning here on our West Coast. So we have a significant amount of nesters in our general area. We've got mostly loggerhead sea turtles is the name that you'll hear when we refer to our sea turtle nesting. And we actually have an incredible team that spends their summer monitoring in the 10,000 islands and specifically in the Cape Romano complex. If you remember, Savannah had pointed that out on our map. And they are the ones who are going out there on a daily basis, and they are checking for the nests. They are monitoring through the nesting season, and then seeing the hatchling success in the end. We also have a great Adopt a Sea Turtle program that you can donate to. Anybody can, and that helps those programs run throughout the summer. And then in the lower right-hand corner, just a couple staff there with some of our educational posting, when it comes to these areas that we share with people, such as our bird nesting and sea turtle nesting areas. We have to designate them as critical wildlife area, and we have to make sure the public is aware that there may be limits to access when it comes to those areas. So you can see here the signage saying no vessels, people, animals swimming or wading. That's really just to give these species a chance, the best chance for survival. And again, same thing, those staff are going out there and monitoring. Right now, during the summer, we should start seeing some beach nesting birds, but also non-breeding shorebirds are monitored throughout the year. And we have a wonderful a wonderful cooperation with Audubon actually to help with their monitoring as well as them help with us. So again, another very important agency coming in and making sure we can complete our mission here. I also want to mention the Conservancy of Southwest Florida is pretty crucial in some sea turtle monitoring through the reserve. In the Key Waden area, we relied heavily on their staff and interns to monitor the Key Waden nesters. So it's not only our own staff that do this amazing research, you know, and monitoring. We have people come from all over the United States, from all over the world to essentially nerd out and do research in the reserve. That's what they're designed for. They're playgrounds for nerds like you and me. And through this process, we also get to mentor several students. So whether they're fulfilling their undergrad, master's, or even PhD candidates, we are very much appreciative of the fact that these students want to come here and work with us, but it also gives us a chance to mentor them, help them publish papers, get our research out there. We couldn't do it actually without them. Broadens our horizons. So into the stewardship department here, which again, resource management is another name that we'll hear for this group. So, you know, our resource managers, they work very closely with all the sectors to provide, you know, strong science to management connection. And really this is with the idea of conservation in the headlines. So posted here talking about invasive species. This is a big issue. We have, you know, the problem often comes from plants, insects, fish, reptiles as seen here, but there's cases with other animals. Some problematic species for the reserve are things like Brazilian pepper. We have feral hogs, and of course we have our python here. But you know, as part of managing that land, you are trying to maintain natural biodiversity. So the impacts of these animals on our native species can be pretty high. So still working in cooperation with our Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission, with, again, the Conservancy. We also have a strong partner in the, this is a long one, the Southwest Florida Cooperative Invasive Species Management Area. It's called CISMA, C-I-S-M-A. But working with them, it's a cooperation that basically, you know, to reduce the impact of or eliminate, hopefully, invasive non-native plants and non-native animals by combining our resources so we can address these species on our landscape. So that's a big part of what they do. Prescribed fire management. This is a pretty exciting topic. We actually have some really cool education pieces on our website right now. I'll talk about that a little later, how you can access that about prescribed fire. But land management through fire is an extremely beneficial method for maintaining that, again, native wildlife. So fire is natural. It is a beautiful process that is basically, you know, rejuvenating. Some of the benefits include replenished nutrients in the soil, reducing natural fuel loads. So any, you know, dead or downed limbs, leaves, stimulation of seed production, maintenance of just your natural plant communities, you know, that benefit native wildlife. So fire can help eliminate exotics, but that renourishment, new growth is going to bring in wildlife to that area. So we have a very active prescribed fire program, highly trained staff that work with personnel and partners all over the state, actually, to come together to work on these prescribed fire management strategies. Cultural resources. So we are in, you know, a really cool area. Florida's history is really awesome, and it's really apparent and evident. For being such a flat state, you can, the smallest bit of elevation really can hold so many years. So we have reserve staff that document and protect cultural resources, and this includes, you know, prehistoric and historic artifacts. It includes settlement sites. You know, we have everything from Calusa Mound complexes that are protected within the reserve to artifacts and writings from the pioneer era. So where our learning center is, right along the creek that runs by our learning center, there were dozens of homesteads that formed right on the waterfront, and they formed a community that really, you know, it even predates Naples. So we believe, and our staff believes, that these resources belong to the people of Florida. So we, you know, want to continue to make sure that they are in existence for future research, for education. And we're very dedicated to maintaining the records and adding to the historical database. And education. So that's where, you know, Savannah and I play our role, but we're so lucky in that we get to go experience what each of those other departments do. We go out with them regularly. We invest time and to understand, you know, what they're working on so that we can turn it around and educate based on individual groups or the larger community. We have some kind of founding field experiences with our local Collier County Public Schools. They're named here. We work through the Collier County Public School system to provide these free field experiences. They're amazing. So we have an elementary educator who implements our Estuary Explorers for 4th grade. Myself, I do focus on middle school students. And so I work with our Survivors program with local 7th graders. And then Savannah is our Marine, she's our high school and college educator. And so she works with students, bringing them out on vessels right into the estuary, doing different collection methods, working at our field station. It's really just amazing what this experience does, welcoming students who possibly have never been, you know, to a coastal area, have never seen the beach, have never gone in the water. This can really open up their eyes and their hearts, because if they create a memory where they felt capable, they enjoyed it thoroughly, you know, they create a good memory, it's something that they're going to care about. So that's a big mission within the education, as to create these moments for these students. Other ways that we educate, though, we do have, you know, an education coordinator who helps basically put together this amazing calendar of events through which we can all educate the public, as well as we have an education assistant on board to do really fun things like lectures and like science night lectures we just had going on. We have amazing classes that you can take to learn about specific, you know, birds. We have art and photography classes that we run. We work with families to do, you know, programming for all ages. We've got an amazing eco-tour partner. They certainly fall under the education aspect. It's a way that we can help communicate to them everything's going on in the reserve, and they communicate it to their guests. And then awesome special events. Another kind of education sector, but they're in their own department, is our coastal training program. So this is a really unique program. Rookery Bay began actually a series of these coastal zone management workshops back in the late 80s, yeah, like 1989. And they basically were to help improve decisions about coastal resources in Southwest Florida. So the effort evolved into a forum for professional training, for field education, networking, for, you know, a variety of Southwest Florida professionals to resolve coastal and environmental issues. So some of their groups that they would focus on would be like landscape professionals, planners and floodplain managers, natural resource managers from other agencies, elected officials, you know, and even like state or federal agency staff. So just a truly amazing program that is now called the Coastal Training Program. And this model was eventually adopted in all 29 national research reserves. So it started at Rookery Bay, and I know it's a legacy that they're very proud of here. And all of that is really, a lot of that, the last few slides I talked about is through this amazing center that we have that's, you know, still pretty young as far as the center goes. It's not open right now, but boy, oh boy, when this beautiful place is open, it adds a lot of value to the work we do. It really is the floodgates for all the information about the reserve, so you can go there and get your hands wet in our touch pool, our estuary encounter, and meet several different critters that you probably never knew existed. You can experience local art in the gallery. You can go on trails, and you can try to understand with just, within a couple hours, the mission and basically the efforts of all the departments I've been talking about. It's all housed in this amazing center. So because the center is closed and right now we're not offering these amazing programs and trainings, we've switched to the newest thing going on at Rookery Bay, which is our virtual education opportunities. So I encourage everybody to check out rookerybay.org, the website down there on the lower right-hand corner. It's under our family activities. We've got everything from coloring sheets for the young ones to videos and demonstrations. We've got our wildlife camera up and running, showing people who's roaming the reserve while we're at home. It's been a really fun thing for us to put together and provide for the community, in the spot we're in. And I saved the best for last, truly. Just like we could not do our work here at the reserve without the Friends of Rookery Bay, we could not do our work without volunteers. Savannah did mention this group called Team Ocean. They're a strictly volunteer-led boat stewardship program where volunteers are going out on the water. We have a wonderful boating community here. We have this beautiful reserve for people to enjoy, and they're out there one-on-one with other boaters saying, hey, did you know you're in the reserve? Did you know that sea turtles are nesting this time of year? Helping them with best boating practices and helping them to enjoy the reserve to the fullest. We've got them on the grounds doing all kinds of programming, education, training. They're helping maintain our trails. They're out there in every single department. And I just shout out for any volunteer that's on right now. I really appreciate all the work you do. Every staff person does. And it's National Volunteer Week, I think, right now, appreciation. So big shout out for the volunteers of Rookery Bay. And with that, I think, that ends our program here for the Discover Rookery Bay. I hope that everybody got just a sense of the work we do here. It means everything to us. And I think we're gonna open it up for a question and answer. So Ryan, I can hand the screen back to you. Savannah, do you have anything else to add?
No, thank you everyone so much for tuning in. And hopefully we will, next time we're all on the same platform, hopefully it will be in person. But I'm glad that we could do this in the meantime. And thank you, Ryan, for setting this up for everyone.
Yeah, of course. And, just to add to what you guys were saying there, all of this stuff that goes on at Rookery Bay is so important and so great. And I think Jeannine said something really special to me in that, any experience that somebody has in the reserve could change the trajectory of what they're doing for the rest of their life. And I'm sitting here as a perfect example, as one of my first outdoor experiences in Southwest Florida was a field trip at the Rookery Bay Reserve through the high school program. And then I went on to work with the research department as a sea turtle intern. I worked with the coastal training program doing environmental policy work. And now we serve as the exclusive eco-tour partner for the Friends of Rookery Bay, which is vitally important to the operation of the whole entire place. So keep in mind, while we're going through this global pandemic, there's businesses that are struggling, and it's all of us, nonprofits included. So any way that we can support the Friends of Rookery Bay right now is very important and vital. So go become a member of the Friends of Rookery Bay. For the cost and what you get from it, it is absolutely worth it. And you have this resource at your fingertips and a front row seat to all the great programs that they have going on. And if you go out and rent a kayak or get on a boat tour or kayak tour with us, Rising Tide Explorers, you should know that you're supporting the Friends of Rookery Bay and all the programs you just learned about, because we are the partner and a percentage of the proceeds go to support that organization. So how cool is it to know that you can go have fun on an adventure and support a vital nonprofit in your own community, and learn about this amazing place hands-on at the same time. So now what we'll do is we'll open it up to questions. Feel free to use the chat function, and or you can raise your hand, and I'm trying to figure out how that works. But feel free to use that, ask questions. We got Jeannine and Savannah here to answer them. And right before we open it up, I'll show you the last little bit here. Our next presentation coming up this week will be the only week that we do two, just to kick it off strong. You're going to get to hear from me with Magic of the Mangroves. And like I said before, we're going to dive deep into mangrove ecology. And, you know, you've learned about Rookery Bay, what they do, how it started. And now you can kind of get into what makes up the Rookery Bay and how mangroves kind of form this unique coastal landscape that is Southwest Florida. I love them and I love talking about them. So it should be fun. Make sure to go to risingtidefl.com/knowledge to register for that one. And then you'll see all the other cool events like Battle of the Bay and all that stuff coming up. So now I'll stop talking and I'll answer, put it out to questions if anybody's got any. So go ahead. Oh, and volunteer. Forgot to mention that. Make sure that's another opportunity to get involved with Rookery Bay is to get out there and volunteer. Lots of cool stuff you can participate in, and you'll be contributing to the great work they do. All right. Well, I don't see that many additional questions coming in that weren't answered. Thanks for the kudos, Joe and Charlie. And feel free to send us a message, info@risingtidefl.com, if you have any additional questions. Oh, there's one. Okay. So we got one question there. Can you see that, Jeannine?
That's a good question.
All right. Who wants to take that one?
I'll start by mentioning one thing and then I'll pass it on to Jeannine. So one effect that we see due to a changing climate, in particular, the big thing that we spend a lot of time thinking about at Rookery Bay is sea level rise. So one really interesting thing that we're seeing is the northern migration of aquatic habitats. So mangroves, which are that fringe habitat right on the edge of the tip of Florida, we're starting to see mangroves starting to march progressively further and further north. So even now at our sister reserves on the Panhandle and in St. Augustine, way up north in Florida, they're starting to see mangroves there. But also if you are to go south of 41, where you know there's a lot of what was typically freshwater marsh, you're starting to see these mangroves move into that area. And so as a response to sea level rise, mangroves are moving more and more inland. So you're having this entire shift in what habitat is where. And, you know, it is a natural response to a changing climate, but at the same time, that makes a lot of changes for a lot of different species. So there's even things like the Cape Sable sparrow, which is an endangered species. That is one thing that's suffering from both habitat fragmentation, but also that northern march of these different habitats. So Jeannine, do you want to add anything to that? I know that's one thing that we look at very closely in terms of our habitat monitoring at the reserve, is how these habitats are changing because of sea level rise.
Yeah, just to kind of piggyback on that, we just really established what's called a Sentinel Site Cooperative. So here at Rookery Bay, so that's kind of like an addition on our research end. It's a NOAA initiative, so our federal partner here, but it's basically, it's a way to bring together, you know, the science, management, and technology to address specifically the impacts of sea level change on our coastal communities. So it is a newer area that we've just initiated, but it's going to give our community appropriate steps. Like we'll be able to identify the appropriate steps for minimizing impacts of sea level rise. So that is a really great thing as far as like the community knowledge goes. We'll have science on the ground working towards that. But yeah, just the fact that, you know, these species are very sensitive to things like temperature, salinity. They all have these cues, you know, that are based on these different gradients. Whether you're a planktonic, you know, larval fish, or you are a propagule, you know, from a mangrove. So based on temperature, based on things like salinity, which play a vital, you know, a vital role in an estuary, as those both change, as you get seawater flowing into new areas because of sea level rise, you have the warmer temperature combined. I think just, yeah, seeing the fluctuations of species shift around, it's gonna, you know, it's gonna encourage maybe competition or discourage it. It's going to impact food webs. We could start to see new species that we haven't seen before, and that could be exciting, but we could also lose some and they'll be going further north, just like those plant communities that Savannah was talking about. So I think, you know, I'll echo something that one of my mentors says, you know, constantly, is that, you know, this is a vast system that already has, you know, several impairments. And so who knows what something like sea level rise or even, you know, temperature increases can add to that. And is it a result though of the system already being stressed out or not? There's so many things at work here. It's really hard to factor in just one thing.
All right. Well, thank you, Joe, for the question. And thanks, Savannah and Jeannine, for so elegantly addressing it. And if there's no other questions, we've been on for almost an hour now. And I hope you guys got as much out of this as I did. You know, we talk about all of these details about the Rookery Bay Reserve on all of our guided tours. And it's just great to hear it from another point of view. So make sure that you visit Rising Tide Explorers, risingtidefl.com/home edition. Check out all the cool things we have going on. Sign your kids up for Explorers Academy, where they can learn and keep busy. Get your votes in for Battle of the Bay, and check out our sportscast videos that are up right now on our YouTube channel, soon to be on our Facebook page. Give us a like, give us a follow, sign up for Friday's presentation, and get out on the water, because I'm sure you guys all have cabin fever. Schedule a rental kayak, and then when we launch our tours again, you'll be the first to know. Thanks again for tuning in, and we hope to see you guys again on Friday and for the rest of our great presentations coming up. So thanks so much, Jeannine and Savannah, for sharing that with us today.
My pleasure.
Thank you everyone for joining us. We miss you.
Yeah. All right, well, let's get out on the water soon.
Sounds good.
All right, guys, now I got to figure out how to stop this. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time. I'm still on.
She leave. I'm gonna call her. I didn't mean to hang up so drastically.
Oh, end meeting.